Thank you very much, Riv. I mean, that was a spicy game, to say the least, right?
Yeah.
Back and forth, as he mentioned. I'm glad we did get to hear from both sides in the interview because at the end of the day, there were so many moments of great play by both teams, and we'll get into a couple very specific elements in which they showcased. But I mean, who could have asked for a better second place game than that one between Cloud9 and CLG?
It feels like almost every Cloud9 game, we're just like, that was the best game of the split. Hands down. And then even COG games yesterday, that was the best game of the split. Maybe this was the best game of the split because it was back and forth, lead changes all over the place, and teams that are willing to go for plays.
Yeah.
It backfired occasionally, but it probably worked out beneficially more often. And it was used to be like kind of just Cloud9 that would do that, but both teams were throwing heavy punches this game, which made it awesome.
Yeah, my favorite thing about this game, though, is each team had very stark differences in their composition and what they wanted to accomplish. And then you felt as a viewer, from a visceral standpoint, I'm just like, this is when they have that slight edge. This is when you feel Cloud9 is pressured to make a move or when CLG is pressured. And you identify those just sometimes even without knowing because you see how the game is going, the flow of it, and how the teams are reacting to each other. Because there was that perfect ebb and flow of when do we answer the split push? When do we actually fight and engage? And you saw the mechanical skill that they had to use to even get those engages on Cloud9's side.
Exactly. And so often when we watch some of these games between a split push team and a team fight team, you'll see one team just kind of get the momentum and then shove it down the other team's throat, right? But here, you could constantly see both teams were good enough to dictate the style to the other team. And it had that ebb and flow of, now it's a split push game. No, now it's a forced team fight team down mid lane. And both teams are reacting incredibly fast.
So let's get into some of those plays themselves. The first one being a fantastic play by Cloud9, recognizing the split push threat, knowing they need to fight in the mid lane. We'll get it up on your screen. I'm going to let Jat run away with this one. Just a really awesome example of shot calling at its finest and then execution of the call to follow.
And we always talk about how well Cloud9 can improv because it's actually HuHi who gets caught out at the beginning of this play, and they're suffering from a gold deficit right now. So HuHi sees Xmithie coming up. He didn't expect that. He gets caught. He knows he has to engage. So the call is to go, and look how far away Rush is and how well he follows this call. He already had a ward to kick Stixxay back, but he placed a better one for the angle. And then we're watching the split push angle of this as well, because they have to be able to go for Baron while also stopping the split push. Since they'd won the fight, Jensen's able to recall. These are the two people you need to be able to kill Darshan with. They do that, and then the immediate teleport. So it's one after the other, after the other. And there wasn't a hesitation in any of these plays. So even though it began with CLG actually trying to force the issue on Cloud9, it was kind of like a delay recalls, make them fight us, let Darshan split push. Cloud9 was able to turn it around and get, I think that was their first or second Baron, I don't remember, but it was one of the two Barons that they got in the game. And it was all because of their improvisation and their ability to shot call as a team.
And it's funny because that play actually starts because both teams are trying to accomplish something. C9 is in the bush with a pink ward, and HuHi is thinking, I need to get to a backliner here, get to those double AD carries. So if you catch them out, they don't have any frontliner on this team. You're basically relying on Bard to throw in the Tempered Fate to save people. So they're waiting for that play. Jensen, of course, he's over off on the left side, and it actually doesn't go too terribly for them because that was a 3-on-4 in the mid lane. And because it didn't go terribly, they're able to just have Jensen back, and then they create that numbers advantage later. So they got pretty lucky on that one, but it was something that both teams were setting up for.
Yeah, for clarity, that was the second Baron. The first one was the one where they all died except for Jensen. In the pit. But
2000 Baron power play.
That was the negative 2000. Yeah, exactly. The first
awesome.
time we've seen that here in the LCS. But you know, that also, too, though, shows you, as you mentioned, because it was a 3v4, the power of the follow-up and the mechanics of Rush multiple times, more than multiple times in that game, kicking people out and being able to zero somebody out. Now let's flip to the other side of the coin. The split pushing team, the team that's getting aggressed on in the mid lane, has to deal with the full 5-man pressure and create time for Darshan. We're going to pull up a replay. CLG defending their own inhibitor. This was pointed out by Dom in the interview. Aphromoo's fantastic Bard ult and play here in this fight in general.
Yeah. And the biggest thing for me is Darshan always knows when to enter a fight and when not to enter a fight. So let's start rolling this out here, and you're going to see this Aphromoo Bard ulti sets it up. It allows the TP to come through, and Darshan comes into fights when he knows there's about an 80% chance that they're going to win it at that point already. He jumps onto Jensen, gigantic damage threat there. Sneaky gets exhausted, so the fact that these damage dealers have pressure on them, and then Aphromoo even flashes to throw a Cosmic Binding out to re-angle it so that Sneaky gets locked up against a cannon minion. It's just those tiny things in every fight. You can watch these fights over and over again. You got your team fight breakdown.
I think I'm going to watch that fight a few times tonight. I think that's the fight that'll be team fight breakdown on Wednesday.
Yeah, because these are just so intricate with that push and pull of abilities and the timing. And I just absolutely loved this game from start to finish. And you saw how deep everybody had to dig in that game to get those plays to work out perfectly.
Yeah.
Rush is that perfect example. So many kicks backwards that were so flawlessly executed, but it kept them in the game.
Yeah, important to note, HuHi had used his ultimate on the previous turret take, so
Exactly.
he was a little vulnerable there. It felt maybe like they were overreaching just a little bit too much. He did mention in the interview that he felt with 2 Barons, you should be able to close out the game, and so that there must have been a misplay or a missed call somewhere that they weren't allowed to do that. But
Yeah.
a little bit of overreaching, and then CLG, that huge capitalization.
Yeah.
And we also look at the way CLG executed in that fight, right? It might not have been a bad call. It might have just been that CLG played a little bit stronger because you do want to push mid with Baron with 5 as decisively as possible against a team that is designed around split pushing. But I think maybe they got caught a little bit off guard by how good CLG's team fighting can be with a Titanic Hydra Jax in there and a really tanky Udyr who soaked a ton of damage in that last team fight. So amazing game.
Yeah.
And they're going to be a lot of retroing on that.
I was about to say, at the end of the day, one team lost, but I still feel like both teams walked away, in my mind, being better than they were coming in. I was more impressed by their play in this game, both teams putting out huge performances and attempts to shut down the others. It's a scary thought, though, when you're banning out the Fiora and there's another split push threat that CLG can bring to the table. Now we got to worry about a Jax as well if we're going to play CLG in the future.
Yeah, there's so many things in Champion Select you have to worry about. And CLG, I said at the start of the day that their draft is really refreshing. When they ban a Twisted Fate, they're immediately going, well, we want to have split push where you have to send somebody back to answer us. And he has so many split pushers. You ban out Fiora, he's got Jax, he's able to play Pantheon now. So there's a lot of things up Darshan's sleeve. And I think that you have to throw so many bans at him to make it worth it that you really just have to get counterpick, hope you're red side as well. So that's why playoff standing matter.
I hope they meet in playoffs so we can see this game 5 times in a row.
Yeah, exactly. My blood is pumping after that game. Let's see if we can keep it rolling with our next one coming up. We'll see if Liquid can take a win and tie Energy for 5th, or if TSM can snag their share of 3rd place. And after the game, we'll have an interview with mental guru of the LCS, sports psychologist Weldon. So stick around. We'll be right back.